Hello, welcome to Liberty Tactics for today.
I don't know what the date is. Oh, it's the 31st of May, 2013. It's just gone, well, it's 7 minutes past 5. Had a few technical issues here.
Yeah, as we're now on MSI.
We're now on MSI. Yeah. And welcome.
A lot of familiar faces, luckily.
Exactly.
Right.
Tonight we've got a brilliant show. We're going to start off with Guardian journalist Charlie Skelton, who is going to be at the Bilderberg. With him joining us in the first hour will be Brian Gerrish, UK column, the boss. And in the second hour, we're going to be doing a live simulcast with the Pete Santilli show. And Patrick Henningsen's going to be joining us. Liberty Tactics are going to be broadcasting on Guerrilla Media.
Guerrilla Media Network.
Guerrilla Media Network. So
Very cool.
Really excited there. So should we crack on with introduce our first guest, Charlie Skelton. How are you doing, Charlie?
I'm very well. Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine.
Clear,
So you've been reporting on the Bilderberg now for The Guardian for how many years, Charlie?
Well, since 2009, so this will be my fifth, if that's right, yeah.
Okay, and at one time it was only The Guardian who would, it was only yourself for mainstream, was only the person, you were the only person reporting on it. Do you think this year's Bilderberg, which is going to be in Watford, is going to have more mainstream journalists there?
I think absolutely, and I think the number of mainstream journalists that have been coming along has been steadily increasing from pretty much zero a few years ago, and also the way it's being written about in the press, in the mainstream press, I think is improving. If you look at some of the articles that have gone out in recent days, for example, in the Telegraph and the Mail, they're a lot less scornful of people taking it seriously. Obviously, there's a little edge to that, but they're generally speaking far more balanced and far more showing far more respect, actually, for the seriousness of the event that's taking place, which is a good sign, I think.
Well, yeah, it was a bit silly when they were sort of saying, "Oh, it's just a sort of a
conspiracy theorist."
Conspiracy theory, or then it was like, "Well, there's just a load of really rich, powerful people getting together to talk about their golf scores," and it was like, okay. Yeah.
Oh, well, you get that. I mean, that's been a pervading piece of disinformation about the conference. That it's you see these phrases that sort of crop up, such as it's a bunch of old farts, or people past their prime getting together to reminisce about the old days, or play. It's a golfing holiday or a supper club, which is a quite staggering misrepresentation of just a very serious 3-day conference. So, but I kind of think that by chipping away at that disinformation, the alternative media in particular is starting to win that battle. As in the battle being why don't people pay attention to this thing, and why doesn't the mainstream media sit up and ask itself what's going on here, and how does it fit in with the UK's transparency agenda?
I guess you can only ignore the elephant in the room for so long before it starts becoming embarrassing for the media there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. With regards to transparency in government, do you think we're going to learn a little bit more over next weekend? Well,
the Bilderberg group are as you and your listeners well know, is not exactly the most forthcoming organisation with information. However, they've just literally today changed their homepage. So they've got their website, which they put out a couple of years ago in this grand show of relating to the world, which is bilderbergmeetings.org, and they've just literally now, a matter of minutes ago, updated their homepage, and they've removed some of the misinformation off it, which is good. I take some pleasure in constantly talking about how their homepage is just full of absolute nonsense, but they've got rid of some of the nonsense, which is good. So I don't know whether that counts as being forthcoming. I suppose it does. But I'm not really expecting much from the organisation itself. I'm probably expecting more, I think, from the politicians, particularly who'll be attending, and I think they're going to have to be held to some kind of account through release of transparency data, through questions in the House, their fellow politicians asking them questions. So I would look more to the participants, I think, than the organisers.
Mm-hmm. There is a sort of, well, I know in the States you've got the Logan Act, but there is an inherent problem with world leaders meeting together in secret and not being transparent to the people, because, of course, there are elected representatives, and
They shouldn't be going
their
there
entire
and us paying for it either,
exactly.
which has happened in the past.
We'll be paying for the security. How much did they say that they were estimating the security is going to cost because of all the conspiracy loon jobs?
Oh, I don't know. Has a number gone out this year? I don't know.
I believe the mayor, wasn't it? The mayor of Watford was made some comments about it being very, very costly.
And I think 3 police forces are also involved. They're bringing 3 different forces along. Because
there's a massive history of violence from people covering Bilderberg.
That was quite bizarre. When the mayor of Watford spoke out about her worries about violent protests, having been to the last 4 of them, I just thought this is bizarre. Because there's been nothing but concerned citizens, bloggers, alternative media, a bit of media. No one's thrown so much as a shoe.
I think Charlie, I think what's concerning a lot of people, we know at certain protests that have been in London, big protests, there have blatantly been agent provocateurs there. So the peaceful protesters are there, then the agent provocateurs come out, the cameras are then focused on these people, and it puts...
of course, the foreshadowing from the mayor is almost like we're saying it's preparing people for such an event, because your average person that hasn't got any knowledge of Bilderberg may then suddenly, look to the G20 where they've had these riots and such.
But fortunately, the people, if I make a sweeping generalisation, the people that will be attending Bilderberg are not the average person, and they'll be the most clued up, aware, prepared crowd of people with cameras and video cameras. And I would be extremely surprised if a piece of violence wasn't immediately called out as, an agent provocateur, which it almost certainly would be, because there would be no other cause for it, really. I mean, so I would expect an extremely vigilant and aware crowd of people there. So that's which is good. So sort of policing itself in a way. I don't really expect any violence at all. I mean, I expect extremely heavy-handed, sort of massive privacy operation being undertaken by the police, which is disappointing. Because they're going to be invoking various sort of counter-terrorist measures and legislation in the most absurd and unnecessary way. I'm sure of all that, but I wouldn't expect anything more than the odd shouted word at a limo.
Yeah. Brian, are you there?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
So, Brian, what are your thoughts on what Charlie's just said?
Well, I think he's raised some really good points. I'd like to say, first of all, I think it's really great that we've got somebody connected with the mainstream press who's prepared to actually speak about Bilderberg, because at the moment we're still seeing many people won't. I wonder whether I could ask Charlie a simple question, and that is, what do you think Bilderberg is about? If you said that you think it's a good thing that I think you said the Telegraph and the Mail are improving their reporting, but what do you think that Bilderberg is about that we need to improve reporting?
Well, I say that it doesn't. It's fairly easy to thin slice what the Bilderberg Group and its annual conference is if you just look at the participant list. So when people say it's a bunch of old farts playing golf, I'd say, well, that's not quite right. If you look at the list, it's the chairman of HSBC, it's 4 executives from Goldman Sachs, it's it's board members from banks, it's the vice chairman of Citigroup, it's the chairman of Lazard, it's the this, it's the that, it's the head of Shell, quite a lot of Shell go, chairman of Shell, CEO of Shell, chairman of BP. I could go on and on. These are people at the extreme pinnacle of their professional career. So what I would suggest that it is what it looks like, which is an intense lobbying forum for high finance interests and big corporate interests. Corporations like Shell, BP, Goldman Sachs, Nestle, Unilever, etc. The people that send their bosses along, I think they're the people that are. And at this forum, you have finance ministers, and politicians, and I think what it looks like is what it is what I'm trying to say. A high finance, big business lobbying tool.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
the concept that these guys meet together to play Angry Birds is a bit ridiculous.
Sorry, carry on, Brian.
Well, I just wanted to say that obviously you're absolutely correct when you're saying that there's high-flying business people, and you've named a number of banks. What I find very interesting is that amongst these high-flying, very, very rich and unaccountable corporatists, we've got serious people. We've got military people. If we go back to 2002, we've had Lord Owen there. If we go to the American side, we've got, I'm talking about 2002, John Deutsch, former director of the Central Intelligence Agency, and he's apparently in a closed-door meeting, for example, with Vladimir Vluahi, if I pronounce that properly, who's an advisor from Goldman Sachs. We've had Ed Balls attending. I've got, on another date, I've got Lord Carrington, who was a former General Secretary from NATO. So this is not the case that this is simply people involved in big business, because amongst them we've got politicians, we've got members of the CIA, we've got members of the British senior British military people, and many people in the States have already pointed out that to have a mix of people connected with the US Armed Forces or even the American intelligence services having closed-door meetings with corporate people is actually a breach of the American Constitution. And certainly I would say, as a former military man, to see senior military people from the British side having cosy little closed-door meetings with the head of Royal Shell or people from Russia or international bankers, there's a really serious question to be asked. What is actually going on here? This isn't about boosting businesses. There is something much more sinister going on behind closed doors, because what policy are these people making?
Yes, I'd like to. Can I answer that? Which is, I totally agree with you. And I when I was listing the banks and energy companies and giant corporations, I was sort of mentioning the easiest thing to understand, I think, for when people look at this event. Obviously, yes, you have the extremely strong intelligence sector represented in there. You have people, for example, from the Hoover Institute. You have people from Hudson Institute. You have the think tanks, the big think tanks with very close ties to the intelligence community. And you do have, as you say, a lot of military. You have the head of the NSA. You have the White House National Security Advisor there last year, and generally goes. And so absolutely, I totally agree with you. There's a strong sort of military intelligence representation there as well, at the very highest level. Yes.
Well, we've also got Kenneth Clarke, former Chancellor of the Exchequer, sitting down with private bankers. I mean, I look at this, and I'm relatively new to the scene, so I've started to understand this over the last whatever it is, 5 or 10 years, I suppose. But something is very wrong here. We've got people meeting on an international scale behind closed doors, deciding economic and financial policy, not only in Britain but actually across the world. Yes. This is treason, isn't it?
Well, I don't know about treason, but what it certainly is in certain very specific cases, it's a breach of the ministerial code. And if you go to the the parliamentary websites, the official ones, you can look at the British Parliamentary Code. You can look at the behaviour to which the standards of behaviour to which ministers are expected to be held, and in very specific cases, for example, George Osborne, you can see that he hasn't abided by that. And what I mean is he hasn't declared the meetings that he's had, and they are expected to do so. And this, the ministerial code was even hardened in July 2011, with David Cameron introducing a new clause to it, which specified that meetings with the media, with media proprietors, senior executives, and editors, no matter what the nature of the meeting, all meetings of these should be declared. And if you look at the number of media proprietors, which is something else we haven't mentioned, and editors at this meeting, it comes as something of a shock to find that in his Treasury declaration he fails to mention that he spent 3 days in their company, let alone had a meeting. So there is, in the sense that the Americans have their Logan Act, we do have at least the ministerial code. So which puts the ball actually in David Cameron's court, because I think he's the only person that can act upon the ministerial code and sort of keep his ministers in line. So there is at least something we can hold, some level of standard behaviour that we can hold ministers to. Politicians, you just kind of expect them to be a little bit more forthcoming.
Well, I don't actually. I expect them to lie, but maybe that's a bit of a hard line. But I've got a letter in front of me by Ed Balls where, of course, he attended Bilderberg. He then charged all his travel and accommodation to the public purse and then simply refused to shift on it, even though Bilderberg's own rules say people attend in the personal capacity. And then we've got Rory Stewart MP from up in Cumbria, who simply refused to tell his constituents what he actually did at Bilderberg in Switzerland. Yeah. So we're seeing MPs blatantly lie to people. You are picking up that something serious is going on. How is it that the editorial teams from major newspapers, such as the Telegraph or the Mail or even the Guardian, how is it that Bilderberg has been going on year after year after year, but these mainstream editorial teams don't seem to pick up on the seriousness of it? Or is it that they're being gagged?
Sorry, shall I answer or try and answer that? I've had a lot of experience of speaking to editors, news editors, members of the media who I've been, I suppose, quietly lobbying to attend and report on this meeting. And you would be surprised and horrified by the number of extremely senior people that I talk to who, I mean literally the editors of TV news desks. So the most senior news editors who just go, "Oh no, sorry, what is that? No, I've not heard of that. What's that? Can you?" And it's shocking every time it happens. But I find there is a conspiracy of ignorance as much as anything else, and conspiracy would be the wrong word there. Although I think there's an extremely high level of ignorance, if you can measure it like that, amongst news journalists and parliamentarians about this conference. And I think that is a legacy of an extremely well-run, anti-PR campaign by the Bilderberg Group itself, as in applying pressure, much as celebrities do when they, phone Max Clifford, probably a bad example now, but they'd phone up their PR company and say, "Can you keep me out of the papers?" They pay money for that to happen, and I think that happens, with the Bilderberg Group. And I think that what you'll see when the levels of ignorance in both the public and in journalists and news editors is a legacy of a very sustained, high level campaign to keep the workings of this group sort of outside of the general chatter of the news. So partly it's just that people literally haven't heard of it. I know that's staggering, but I think that's true. On the other hand, and I think there is a sustained ongoing attempt to limit the media exposure of this meeting, and I think that's quite clear. And I've had small experiences of it myself.
One thing I'd like to speak on, gentlemen. Of course, the internet is Google these days. You've got, not just the search engine, but the analytics, the everything. It's all encompassing, and Google are becoming more and more of a prominent fixture in Bilderberg, and now they've also got a Google conference pretty much directly after. What do you think this relationship is? Are they working as a gateway? What do you think these leaders of nations and leaders of enterprise will be discussing with Google? And, what's your breakdown on that?
Sorry, me?
Well, either.
Well, I would say, but if I'm going to answer that, I would say that in the last few years, if you look at the makeup of of Bilderberg and the steering committee itself, you will see a movement into this group of the high-tech near media stars. So, Peter Thiel from Twitter, Facebook. So he's on the board of Facebook, set up Twitter. He's a billionaire venture capitalist. You've got Eric Schmidt, the executive chairman of Google. Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn. Suddenly these figures start appearing on the scene, and they're being, Peter Thiel's now on the steering committee. So they've sort of been taken up and sort of embraced, and now they're part of the machinery of this conference now. And so they're obviously big players, and Google seems to have been all over the UK at the moment. Eric Schmidt's here, been in number 10, and he's on the Business Advisory Council of Cameron. And I know that Google has been having various sort of meetings and things at the Grove for a while now. I had a cab driver the other day who told me, "Oh yeah, I've been dropping off Google people at the Grove." So I think it seems like Google are having a giant sort of confab at the moment, and Bilderberg sort of slap in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm. Brian, would you like to
comment
on that?
I think I'd say I know what Charlie's talking about is giving other listeners an insight into what's happening here. But if we just think about this for a moment, we've got unaccountable billionaires, be they bankers or oil men. We've got international globalist think tanks. We've got CIA. We've got military people, or recently retired military people. And now we've got something as powerful as Google on the control of information on a worldwide scale, having secret meetings with no minutes given out to the public. We've got a Google. Let's deal with the real connections with government, because, of course, it's personal, isn't it? We've got godparents of David Cameron's. Well, it was unfortunately his son, but we've got godparents in the Google empire. So we've got another layer of failure of transparency around the British government. So this Bilderberg, when you said, I'm not flabbergasted that you've got editorial teams who say they don't know anything about it, because I'm going to suggest they're lying. They absolutely know about Bilderberger, but they will not report because they've been told not to report. And why will they obey that instruction? Because the mainstream press, of course, are absolutely owned by other individuals. I think what's beginning to happen now is that we've got a few mainstream journalists, and I give you, Charlie, and others credit, starting to wake up and say there's something really very nasty building here, and we need to report on it. I've just had 4 days over in the Czech Republic talking to people about what is going on in UK. I could reel off millions of CCTV cameras. I can talk about secret arrests. I can talk about secret courts. I can talk about people being shut up in mental institutions as a result of Theresa May's MAPA and FTAC arrangements. And the people in the audience who'd lived under the communist regime said, Brian, what you're looking at is something akin to communism. And now we've got a group of these immensely powerful people, so arrogant that they've been fobbing off or controlling the mainstream press for year after year. This is something exceptionally dangerous and sinister. And we've got to move a lot quicker, I would suggest, than, a few editors are a little bit ignorant. These people need to understand, unless they start to actually promote a proper free press, we are rapidly sliding into one of the most vicious corporate dictatorships we've ever seen. I'm sorry to be a bit forceful about it, but this Bilderberg event is not some political event where we're all going to have a bit of fun. These people, in my opinion, are absolutely dangerous.
But I mean, I agree. Well, I agree partially with you, but I would say it is a political event. I think it's exactly what it is. It's an event within the way that politics works today, and I think that one way it works is through high-level lobbying. by businesses and corporations, and another way it works is through think tanks, and who, generally speaking, have an extremely close relationship both with business and the intelligence services. And it is a political event insofar as politics comes out the other end of it. Policies. This is how policies get made and just decided upon, shaped, however you want to phrase it. So
we're admitting that these people are actually a government. If these people can meet behind closed doors, shape policies for Britain and any other country they feel that they can, you are absolutely admitting these people are what many protesters and activists are saying they are, which is that they're effectively an embryonic world government.
What I think it does function like, and to use an analogy, is it functions much like the cabinet of a world government. If I was to say, not necessarily I believe that, but if you were to use an analogy, the closest analogy, political analogy, the closest I can see is a cabinet where there's cabinet secrecy is expected to be maintained by ministers. You can talk freely there. And when there are leaks from the cabinet, as happened, under Thatcher and was it Norman St. John Stevens? I can't remember who had to resign, who denied leaking. But anyway, the functioning of a cabinet functions within a government rather like this meeting functions within sort of global sort of geopolitics.
Did anybody vote for these people? Where is any shred of democracy for these people meeting? What you're saying is even more frightening than I thought it was, because you're basically saying that, whether it's your direct opinion, but other people are saying, well, actually, this is a cabinet office for a world government. When did we vote for a world government?
It was on February the 4th. I don't know if you were around.
Pardon?
That was a joke. Absolutely. There's been. The thing is, we have voted for some of the people. People around Europe and America and Canada have voted for some of the people that turn up, and I think that's the key. That's the key point here, because otherwise we might be annoyed about the monopolies and cartels. But it's the presence of politicians that I think is most troubling, certainly for me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because when you've got big business working hand in hand with government, that is dictionary perfect and fascism.
And especially one of these companies that, this country's being, we're all on our knees, that, the general public, and then we've got the bosses of Google who aren't paying barely any tax at all. All these big corporations that are in this country hardly paying any tax at all in this country, while the rest of us are here bailing banks out.
I would like to propose that we have a live video stream from inside Bilderberg. If there's nothing to hide, if there's no dodgy dealings going on, they'll be very happy to have complete transparency. We'll have a video camera and see how much they get done, because I have a feeling that they would be quite tight-lipped to discuss a lot of the stuff that they talk about.
Definitely.
That's a very good point. And I spoke to my MP just yesterday, and she was saying that she attends certain, I was discussing the whole matter with her at length, and she says, look, she attends certain groups, that have business people. It might have entrepreneurs there, it might have public sector workers. But she said, I go to this, what she says, she talked about one. She was thinking about it as she was speaking. She said she attended one, and they stream they live stream the proceedings. And I would have thought that, in the era of transparency that's been so heralded by particularly Osborne and Cameron, I mean, they've gone on at length about how we're in a new world of transparency, that absolutely live streaming would be a perfectly natural, modern way of going about it. I mean, David Cameron says things like, I want to get on with it. I'm quoting him here. I actually got this quote here. I want to get on with it to make a start on this transparency revolution that we're planning. In time, I want our government to be one of the most open and transparent in the world. But I think maybe that time is now.
Yeah, Brian, it would be nice to actually see some.
Brian, what are your thoughts on that statement?
Well, I've got to say, anything that David Cameron says wants to be taken with a huge pinch of salt. But if we go on the subject of transparency, of course, we've got Francis Maude, Cabinet Office Minister, who has supposedly been the champion of transparency. Not only is he a Bilderberg attendee, but of course he has absolutely worked his socks off to make sure that details of the contracts between the political charity Common Purpose and his cabinet office and the leadership team were not released to the public. They've been sitting on these documents now for well over a year. They falsified the minutes of internal meetings, which we can prove because we've got copies of those before and after. So if you want to deal with a political party that's as transparent as dark smoke, we come to the Tories. And Cameron, of course, is the very same man who was pushing the Leveson inquiry, but he withheld his own emails from Leveson. That's been well reported in the press. So these people are either disingenuous or stupid, and I don't believe they're stupid. So we're rapidly coming to the point that we've got our own politicians prepared to lie to us in order to cover up what's really going on in government. I mean, you simply cannot say that anything that is being said by the Conservative government over transparency at the moment is true. The same with the Lib Dems. We've obviously had some extremely unpleasant abuse of women within the party. And where has the transparency been on that? Has there been a full and open investigation? No, it's been covered up by Nick Clegg. With Labour, we've got the rendition flights. So David Miliband runs away to America to make sure that nobody's going to bring him into the spotlight over the torture of people. We're dealing with some very, very dangerous people in our own government. And let's look at the root of Bilderberg. It's immediately after the Second World War, chaired by Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, who was a Nazi. So we are looking at something very... we're talking now, as a result of your comments, about Bilderberg being effectively a cabinet office for a world government with unaccountable billionaires and intelligence people with an ideology that came straight out of the Nazi Party. That's pretty dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah, it's no walk in the park. But I suppose one bit of good news is that there is on the inside of Bilderberg at least one champion of transparency, and that's Kenneth Clarke MP, who said he said in 2012, he said, "This is a world in which government transparency is not only possible but demanded and required." He said, "Transparency is the most effective public inoculation against corruption that any country can have. There is a strong public interest case for almost all government information to be open to scrutiny." So that's good to know that Ken Clarke is there fighting that corner, trying to get transparency.
You cannot possibly believe that. Ken Clarke is the man at the moment who, without any proper job, effectively a minister without portfolio, is pushing for even more secret courts in UK. He sat in front of Leveson, working flat out for further controls in the press. How can you possibly point a finger at Ken Clarke and talk transparency?
Well,
he must be, at the moment, one of the most dangerous politicians in the country. By the time we've got secret courts for libel laws, we've got secret courts for families, we've got secret courts for court of protection. We've got secret courts for anything the government deems to be connected with terrorism. Ken Clarke has got to be a Bilderberger who is the epitome of the danger of this organisation. And you seem to, at the moment, I'm sorry to get a bit emotive about this, but we're dealing with something very, very dangerous building here. And you are quoting mainstream politicians who are deceiving the people in this country as if these people are, respectable members of the establishment.
Right,
David Cameron was put into power £15,000 donated by an international arms dealer.
Listen, I understand exactly what you're saying. I confess I was being a little ironic in my presentation.
I did pick up on that, Charlie.
Yeah, Kenneth Clarke as a champion of transparency is obviously nothing but, and I certainly agree with you that his relationship with with transparency and the truth is a shaky one. So yes, I'm sorry if I didn't come across, but yes, I understand what you're saying.
We've been working very hard with exposing Ken Clarke and his secret courts at the column, you see, Charlie, and it's and some revelations have come, other stories, away from government have come out about Ken Clarke with regards to Ben Fellows as well. And that's why we're kind of quite passionate when Ken Clarke's name is mentioned.
I know Charlie is limited with his time.
Yeah.
So I'd like to... My feeling with Bilderberg is that the more public scrutiny is on it, the less importance it will have. I bet these guys could meet almost as well either virtually or in another secret group that will take another 25, 30 years for people to uncover, just as Bilderberg did. Do you guys think that we're moving into a point where Bilderberg may become more transparent but actually less effective, and they may be using other methods to have these conflabs between corporate and political classes?
I mean, obviously that's almost impossible to speculate on, but I wouldn't say that it's worth giving up on reporting on Bilderberg, because just with the idea that they'll simply sidestep and move aside, because there's the structure of this conference, one in which politicians and ministers from around Europe meet with in the terms of as we've described, has to at some level be public, in the sense that there's so many public servants there. So if you don't understand what I'm saying, is that at least it's slightly easier to keep tabs on a government minister than it is the head of Nestle. All things being relative. So I'm quite happy for them all to carry on meeting, but with as long as we can nudge them or shove them towards a more adult way of behaving, and a more one that respects the populace and the voters who've put these individuals into office. So, and I think that in terms of nudging and shoving them towards this utopia of transparency, the alternative media has been absolutely instrumental, and has sort of latched onto this great elephant in the room, and sort of latched onto its ankles and hasn't given up. And obviously there'll be some as the Watford conference goes on, there'll be some disinformation appear in the mainstream press. You'll see the tinfoil hats come out, that sort of comment, the sort of dissing of the alternative media, which is just boring and annoying and is the bane of my life. But and of yours, I'm sure. But I also think that it's moving towards a better way. The alternative media, I think, should at least spot good things when they happen and say, yes, these articles are coming out, and as yet we haven't been. They haven't used the word fruit bat. You know what I mean? I mean, little victories, but and also, I mean, the alternative media also has to. There's been a little bit of squabbling behind the scenes already in this conference, but we've got to remember what who the object of our interest is and the object of our reporting, and that's this extraordinary event. And I mean, I'm sure you'll be urging all the people to come down and bear witness, and take their photographs and write it up and lobby their MPs and send off their emails to newspapers and to put comments under all of that, and all of that just gradually increases the consciousness and awareness in the public and in the press. And in politicians themselves as well, of the importance of this meeting.
Oh, Charlie, that's great. Just before you go, I don't know how much you can comment on this, but with regards to the Fringe Festival, I mean, the website's been up a while now. It's come to light that their application has been turned down by Watford Council to hold it in Casselbury Park.
Yeah.
And just a couple of questions I've got about it. One, who's behind the Fringe and who's actually funding it? And do you feel that maybe the planning and all this should have been agreed prior to getting the website out and getting the speakers? Because now if it's been denied, there's going to be these hordes and hordes of people, nowhere to go. People are going to get really annoyed that there's nowhere to go, because the Grove's on a very big main road. We know the back entrance to the Grove is all going to be sealed off. There is like little Whippendale Woods, which is just behind the Grove Hotel. I'm just wondering what's going to happen now with all these, they were announced that all these speakers were coming, so people are coming, even more people are coming to see these speakers, and now there's not going to be anywhere for all these people to go.
Well, I mean, I would say there never was anywhere for them to go, as in except a kind of concerted effort amongst a lot of different activists to try and create a forum at which people like Alex Jones and David Icke and Brian, hopefully, would be able to speak to crowds of people that come. And, I'm all in favour of different people reaching out to different parts of the population in different ways. And I think that the onus is upon the police, actually, in this case, police and council, to deal with the fact that thousands of people are going to be coming down to bear witness to this event. They're going to be coming down because they're Alex Jones listeners, because they read, they read your stuff, they listen to your show, because they listen to David Icke, because they read my stuff, because they have read something in the Independent or the Guardian or the Telegraph. They're going to be coming for all kinds of different reasons, and I'm just a big fan of people turning up and let's see what happens. But I do think that there's a duty of care for these people, and if the council isn't prepared to bend towards accommodating them, and not just them, also primarily accommodating alternative media and media who turn up, and allowing them to do their job as they perceive it to be, then there's going to be a problem. And it's quite frankly, the ball is in their court, I think. And my main concern is what, as is yours, I'm sure, what you are going to write, what I'm going to write, we've all got our reporting to do, and I just hope that the local authorities, or I hate that word, local police and council do their best to accommodate people who are either protesting or reporting about this thing and coming down for whatever reason, whether it's to bang a bongo or hold a telephoto lens. I personally say, the more the merrier.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Charlie, thanks so much. You've gone on over the time. Thank you so much for coming on, and we'll no doubt bump into you next week.
Hopefully so. So see you in sunny Watford.
See you then. Cheers, Charlie.
Right, we'll be back.
Charlie.
We'll be
Bye-bye.
back. We'll be back.
We're going to play a quick song. We're going to then bring Neil Foster on from Sovereign Independent. Brian, are you all right to hang on? We've only got 10 minutes because then we're going to do a live simulcast with the Pete Santilli show and have Patrick Henningsen on. But if you're all right to hang on, Brian, till the top of the hour.
Yes, I can, yeah.
We'll be right back here on the MSI network.
DJ James there in the house, as always, perfect mixing and bringing in.
Brilliant, isn't it?
You're great. Right, we're now joined by Neil Foster. Neil, were you listening to the interview just then with Charlie?
I was, yeah. It broke up on a few occasions, but I got the gist of it.
Okay. Now you've been up, and you've also been liaising with Hertfordshire Constabulary, and I believe some people at the Grove. And can you tell us what you've been up to, and then your thoughts on what Charlie had to say?
Well, I've had...
Can you speak up a bit, Neil, because you're very quiet?
Sure. I've had 3 meetings with Steve Lee, the liaison officer, so far, and numerous phone calls. And, he seems a genuine chap, and he's trying to do his best. And I find it quite remarkable that the police are getting the blame for people advertising a festival which they had no sight for, and then expecting the police just, you snap their fingers and produce somewhere for them to go. I think it's very disingenuous of Charlie and the people behind us to expect the council and the police to pander to their wishes just off the cuff. And I noticed he also never mentioned the funding or who was behind it. But as to what he was talking about, I mean the expectation that politicians are going to be transparent and tell us what's going on is I find it quite farcical. I mean I think Charlie's a comedy writer. So, maybe this is all just a big joke to him, but certainly, to suggest that transparency exists in this government or any previous government, Labour, Conservative, whatever, doesn't matter. There is no transparency. The only thing that's transparent about them is that they're lying through their teeth.
Yeah.
And as is the Bilderberg. I mean, he seems to be under the impression that this is all just a business club. I mean, he doesn't realise there's people in there who are responsible for the mass murder of people.
Yeah.
If he thinks that's a joke, then, I don't know what planet he's living on, to be honest.
Yeah. So what have you been discussing? I mean, I know you've been up there, obviously on behalf of Sovereign Independent, but you've also, you're helping us at Liberty Tactics out and the column. What have you been discussing, and what have you managed to organise for our little group of alternative media?
Well, as far as I'm aware, there's only going to be 3 tents allowed on the site. There'll be this self-named Bilderberg welcoming committee. I don't know. They seem to think they've got some official status on this, but of course they don't. And we'll have our own press tent, and there's room for one other. There may be a little gazebo up for just to put equipment under, because the tents may have to be quite a distance from the fence due to the Grove Hotel not wanting generators on their land.
Yeah.
So that might be a problem, but we're working on that. Also, as far as I'm aware, I was told that demonstrators would be allowed at the back gate. That was the week 10 days ago, but I'll clarify that. But he did state quite categorically that we could have some people standing at the back gate. So again, there's seems to be, especially today, a lot of misinformation put out about what's actually going on, and I don't believe for a second we're under this terrorism order either. That was lifted, and we're under road traffic legislation. Maybe it amounts to the same thing. I don't know, but it's certainly not been called a terrorism order. So that's another piece of misinformation that's gone out, and people have picked up on it. And as to a festival, what is there to celebrate? What exactly is there to celebrate with music and jugglers and fire eaters or whatever else is going to turn up? Circus clowns. What are they celebrating? I mean, as far as I'm aware, there's going to be a lot of green groups being invited, climate camp and people like that. Now, if any of those people know anything, they should be fully aware that Bilderberg's actually doing everything they require. So I don't know why they're protesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Brian, what are your thoughts on this on the festival?
Well, I've got to say I agree with Neil. I was a little bit forceful with Charlie. I've got to say, first of all, let's give him credit. He had the nerve to come on. I mean that in a nice way. He had the guts to come on the programme and talk as somebody connected with the mainstream media. So I'm going to say well done for that. But I just put a little bit of pressure on there because I wanted to see whether there was any real passion about what's going on here. And I've said it earlier. I believe that Bilderberg is an extremely dangerous organisation. We've got very powerful, unaccountable people meeting behind closed doors. This is not something where we want a few fire eaters and we want to be listening to nice music. We need to be getting a serious message out to, I'll use an Ian Crane expression, Middle England, ordinary people who at the moment are just having to work their butts off to survive and feed themselves. And while they're not looking over their shoulder, this group of powerful, unaccountable people are busily, I think Charlie was absolutely right, this lot have set themselves up to be the cabinet office of a world government. And we need to take this incredibly seriously. We don't want fun and pantomime. We can have a little bit of polite conversation and we can have some normal humour, but we ought to be there showing that more and more ordinary people, some of whom have now got a little bit of ability in alternative free media, are going to report on what this thing is really about and what these Bilderberg people are getting up to. I mean, it's dangerous.
Sorry. There's actually a residents' meeting in the town hall in Watford on Monday. Well, there are actually 2 meetings because I think there's so many people want to attend. One at 6:30 and one at 8:30. I'll be attending both of them, and I believe Alex Jones is going to be at one of them, or both maybe. And Charlie's wife, who's been instrumental in organising or not organising this festival. Also, Steve Lee, police liaison officer, will be there, and we've been given permission to film it, so we'll be doing that as well. And also, I mean, if Charlie thinks the mainstream media are just ignorant of what's going on, I'll give you a short quote by David Rockefeller back in 1991 in Germany at the Bilderberg meeting, who said, "We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjected to the lights of publicity during those years. But the world is now more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national autodetermination practiced in past centuries. That says it all. The media is fully on board with this, and that's why they don't report it.
Agreed.
I think there's quite a lot of there's a lot of flexibility that the media lend to this sort of group meeting, and a lot of pandering, and it's ridiculous. You cannot have closed meetings where policy is discussed and, let's face it, it pretty much goes forward in private between the corporate and the highest ranges of the corporate and the political classes from different countries. I mean, it's quite insulting that they would actually tell us. You have the mayor here, the mayor of Watford, saying, sort of making it disdainful that people are showing an interest, the public are showing an interest. Yeah. Damn right we're showing an interest, because this affects our lives.
Exactly.
And it's very condescending to pretend that, these guys are just meeting together and nothing that they do say or discuss will have any relevance in our lives. It's extremely condescending.
I think the Mayor of Watford will be there on Monday as well, and the question I'm going to ask her is, where's our evidence to show that attendees protesting Bilderberg have ever caused any violence?
Yeah,
exactly.
Maybe she's seen the roster for this year's and she knows what's going to happen.
Pete Santilli will be joining him in a moment, along with Patrick Henningsen. Brian, your thoughts before you sign out?
Well, I think that because Bilderberg is going to be here in Britain, in Watford this year, it's the chance really for people to put a major marker down. I think that we've got to get all of the alternative free media and all the groups who are really there warning about what's going on in this country. We've got to get them to pull together and get the word out that we have some really dangerous people meeting. The policies coming out of it, the background straight out of Nazi Germany, mega money, bankers, politicians, security people meeting behind closed doors, totally unacceptable. And I think there's got to be a call that all British politicians immediately withdraw from this stuff. If we don't get to grips with this, these people are going to introduce a system which, as my new Czech friends were saying, Brian, some of it you don't understand what's coming. And this is what Bilderberg's about. And the final comment, and I'm just, it's a shame I couldn't say it while Charlie was on, but of course he comes from the Guardian newspaper that was busy, the Scott Trust, which is the funding part of the Guardian. The Scott Trust has been donating money to the Media Standards Trust, which has worked flat out to create the Leveson inquiry, where ultimately, however you look at it, you see an agenda to put control over free mainstream press and media in this country. And I just find that incredible, isn't it? We've got a newspaper that was actually working behind the scenes to help fund Leveson. Well, they never printed an article declaring that. So on the subject of transparency, I think that Charlie's Guardian needs to answer a few questions.
Yeah, agreed. Thanks so much, Brian, for having a day off today and breaking away from it to come on the show. And I'll see you Tuesday, as always. And have a good weekend. Relax. Turn the phone off and put the laptop away and chill.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thanks a lot,
Brian.
mate.
Bye.
All right.
Neil,
bye-bye.
any closing statements from you?
Well, I just agree with what Brian said there. And if Charlie thinks that we elected those politicians to go in there and discuss business behind closed doors with private individuals, bankers, weapons manufacturers, big pharmaceutical giants, then he's sadly mistaken. That's not what they're elected for. Mm-hmm. They're elected to represent us and not the interests of multi-billionaires.
We do have a sort of an epidemic, and maybe it's nothing new, but we're supposed to be in a transparent, open democracy, however the term they use, and there seems to be this acceptance of closed-door private meetings between groups who then make public policy, and it's just ludicrous.
Yeah,
but
totally
especially
ludicrous.
when we're paying for it.
It's treason.
Yeah,
That's what it is. That's what Brian said. It's treason, and that's what they should be in court for.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, Neil, thanks a lot.
Neil, thanks for spending your time with us. That's great. We're going to play a song. Patrick Henningsen hasn't come on yet. We're joining up with Pete Santilli actually at 5:30, but we do have, Brian mentioned Rory Stewart, and I don't know if you're able to play that clip just while we're waiting for Patrick and
play it.
Pete Santilli. We'll play this clip where Rory Stewart is... no, Patrick's on. But we'll play that clip anyway with Patrick Stewart, if that's all right with you, James.
I'll see if I can find it.
Rory Stewart, where he's defending and denying his attendance at the Bilderberg meeting when he was approached by a UK column viewer. So let's play some tunes and we'll be back in 5.
Great. Thanks a lot, guys.
I'm actually going to wind up.
Could I just...
I know there are still people.
Well, it's rather important.
That's another appointment.
Well, could I just ask this one very quick question? Can I just ask this one quick question? You are entitled to a private life. No one would question that. Are you entitled to a private political life when you go to conferences where the global elite meet and you refuse to talk to us, the electorate and the people who put you in Parliament, to talk about it? My late uncle went to the first Bilderberg conference. He was a director of the Bank of England. He told me that they were going for global domination. They were going for world government. We have this from witnesses all over. You attended your first Bilderberg group last time, and you won't tell us what was said there. So can you justify a private political life, please?
Let me answer this question. Can I just fill in the community of Pashdale? These gentlemen, including this gentleman from Denver, has been pursuing this issue for a long time. Last year I went, as he said, to a conference called the Bilderberg Conference. There is a huge industry of conspiracy theories around the Bilderberg Conference, ranging from this gentleman whose uncle told him this was a conspiracy.
And he was the director of the Bank of England.
Through to David Icke, who believes that because I went to the Bilderberg Conference, I am an alien lizard king that has a tail.
He never said that. That's absolute rubbish. That is rubbish, and you know it.
I don't know whether...
Are you going this year?
What?
Have you been invited this year?
Please.
You haven't, okay.
No, this is the truth. I'm afraid this is the actual truth of what we're coming to. The elephant in the room.
Stop.
This is the elephant in the room.
Okay. I need to somehow do it, or I will be accused of not answering the question. I'm sorry. Okay. I apologise for trespassing on your time for another 30 seconds. Okay. I was invited to this conference. I went to this conference. The conference takes place under Chatham House rules. In other words, we are asked at the beginning of the conference not to talk about what we talk about at the conference. I revealed to them the subjects that we discussed. No more than that. You have full legal rights to pursue this through the Information Commission. You're fully aware.
They can't do it. They can't give it.
Because you don't have that legal right to know.
We have a perfect right. You're discussing global domination, world government, for God's sake. You're affecting all of us. Everything you've heard today, Lake District National Park, everything. Common purpose, everything. No, honestly, people need to wake up to what's going on out there.
Okay, let me conclude on this.
You don't know.
Okay, all right.
Everybody's enjoying this enormously, I have to say.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. I went to Bilderberg. I am not going again this year. I have not received an invitation to go again this year. I'm very happy to continue this thing. I do not think that anything you're saying now is any different from what you were saying a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago.
We just want to know what went on.
And I'm very happy for this continuous conversation for the next 25 years. But I wanted to say to the people in this room, thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Patrick. Very happy to come back. Very happy to see you now, if you wanted a private conversation about personally. Very happy to see anybody in surgeries. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your time. It's a Friday. You've given up an hour and a half of your time. Thank you for the passion with which you're dealing with the latest Park. The passion with which you're talking about affordable housing. The passion with which you're talking about broadband. The challenging issues, legal, constitutional, that have been raised. All the advances we're making technologically. Please remain in touch. Thank you for all you're doing for your communities. However much politicians such as myself may or may not be perceived as idle liars, thieves, and promises. You are not.
Well, it's provable.
You are not.
It is provable. McLean is a liar and a thief. Provable. Take me to court. You won't win.
I'm sorry.
McLean didn't. He couldn't win.
My uncle's a director of the Bank of England. He knows what he's talking about.
Welcome back to Liberty Tactics on the MSI Radio Network.
That was a clip which was a UK column viewer and listener taped politician Rory Stewart, and they confronted him. I know the audio was pretty bad, but I think they just had a little... they were doing it off their phone.
Our listeners are used to bad audio.
Yeah, this is true.
We've got Patrick Henningsen from 21st Century Wire.
And UK column. Hello, Patrick.
Hi, Lou. Hi, James.
How's it going, mate?
Very well, thank you. It's very hot.
Yeah,
Very
you're still over at the Lebanon, in the Lebanon?
Yeah, I'm still in the Lebanon, as they call it.
Has it actually got the at the beginning of it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, the British like to say the Lebanon.
That's cool.
And it harkens back to the great colonial days of the Afghan trail overland. So, yes, the Lebanon.
The Lebanon. I like the sound of it.
So we've just had Charlie Skelton on from The Guardian, and Brian. Brian gave him a bit of stick.
Bit of a third degree there.
A bit of third degree. It was
intense.
really good, though. So, Patrick, your thoughts on this year's Bilderberg, your thoughts on the Bilderberg Fringe Festival. Take it away.
Well, quickly, what sort of third degree did Brian give Charlie? Just review that for me quickly.
Go on, James, review.
Well, it was just going, quite into... Charlie was saying how a lot of the media sort of whitewashes or Bilderberg, and that he believes that it's a sort of willful ignorance that Bilderberg is not covered. And Brian was, taking him to task on that and saying, that he thought it was more of a deception than turning the cheek and being ignorant about it.
Yeah, and then he made a little joke about. Well, he was talking about Ken Clarke and transparency, and that just set Brian. That set Brian off regarding secret courts and everything else. And I managed to slip in Ben Fellows as well, and Ken Clarke's connection with Ben Fellows.
Okay. Yes. Well, just getting back to Bilderberg, I have to agree with Brian on that. The media coverage of Bilderberg is, a lot of, again, this goes back to the kind of talk I gave at the Tabernacle a couple weeks ago. People in the mainstream have a propensity, particularly with media, they have a propensity to sort of favor that it's just a cock-up or, as he said, willful ignorance, as opposed to a cover-up. And I'll have to agree with Brian on it, knowing what we know about the media, especially the corporate media, that the news cycle is absolutely planned and calculated, and it's done for various reasons, public relations in and around government, and also concealing things that the public shouldn't be privy to know much about. That is the job of the mainstream media. That's the service that the corporate media, especially the BBC, we're going to say because it's a state-run broadcaster, but not just the BBC, others as well. That's the job that they do for the political elite. And the political elite, their job is to cover up really high-level financial and commercial and corporate movements. So it's a whole daisy chain of, I wouldn't say willful ignorance, but definitely willful covering up certain things. A perfect example of that is anytime there's really major scandals breaking, all of a sudden a story comes out of nowhere, out of left field, as they say. In Boston, Boston bombings happened last month, and then you had bang, Benghazi scandal, bang, IRS scandal, bang. There's another one as well. I forgot. Obama had like 3 right in a row, and all of a sudden, out of left field, on every major network, almost like it was synchronized. Jodi Arias, this woman who apparently slaughtered her boyfriend because he split up with her, she was in her coming to trial, and it was a massive media event. It dominated every major media outlet for a period of about a week. And that really took the steam out of the news agenda that should be focusing on 3 massive scandals in the White House. But it wasn't. Instead, it was focused. The public was meant to focus on Jodi Arias. So that's the first thing about Bilderberg. As far as the Fringe Festival goes, did you guys learn anything new about that this week? Is it happening?
Well, they've been turned down. They wanted to... I mean, this is a question I asked Charlie Patrick, was did he feel that maybe the website and the speakers shouldn't have been announced until they had clearance to hold it somewhere? Because the application to hold it in Castlebury Park has been turned down. So now you've got, obviously, Alex Jones and all his guys turning up. And many, many people are going to turn up to hear Alex talk. Ike's coming over for it. Ike was due to talk as well. So you've got Ike followers all planning to attend as well. And now there's nowhere for all these people to go. And the Grove is on a very busy main road. It's the main road that leads straight up to the M25. Apparently the back entrance is going to be closed off. You have got a woodland area called Whippendale Woods just behind. But that is public area, but you can't see into the Grove or anything else. So now there's going to be thousands and thousands of people, by the looks of things, who are going to turn up with literally nowhere to go. And my main concern really is also that agent provocateurs as well. And then, if mainstream media are going to be in attendance this year, there are agent provocateurs there. The cameras are going to automatically be turned on these people as if we're part of it as well. And it could possibly discredit a lot of the work. I mean, I could be completely wrong here, but it's just a feeling, knowing from previous, protests that have gone on up in London, G8, where you've had the agent provocateurs there turning up. This is a huge concern of mine.
Well, mine as well, Lou. From the beginning, when I saw this advertisement for this Bilderberg Fringe, I thought, well, on one hand, this could could force the media spotlight onto Bilderberg, even if it's only for Fringe or even a little sort of, freak circus for the mainstream consensus reality people to go, point their fingers at Alex Jones and David Icke and anybody else who's not, an accepted part of the mainstream, as it were. But the big issue here is, having done events and gotten planning permission and got planning permission rejected for various events over the years in London and also in the UK, once your application is rejected, then basically that's it. You can't, even if you show up, the police will, basically the council talks to the police talks to the council, and if you show up after your application's been rejected or anybody shows up, there'll be an active effort by the police to shut down any gathering within the sort of reasonable vicinity of where your event was meant to be held. So this is like a perfect, potentially a perfect little Trojan horse to basically clean out anybody in the vicinity of this hotel for Bilderberg. Now, me as a kind of more of a guerrilla journalist and also a guerrilla activist in terms of, just showing up, organized a pretty successful anti-war public kind of gathering in 2003 and 2006, and we just showed up. There was not even an attempt to apply for anything. We just showed up, and then once you get there in mass, and once you have the numbers on your side, the police really have to be there just to keep order. They can't clear. It's very hard for them to clear you out, especially if you're law-abiding and peaceful, and you're not, tearing the place to pieces. There's not a lot the police can do once the crowd has assembled. Now, all this, sort of activity beforehand with the Bilderberg Fringe, it's almost like, they could just come in there and say, no, what are you guys doing here? No, we rejected all those applications, and can you clear out, please? Otherwise, I'm going to arrest you. I could see a very different conversation now, which is a shame. But I don't know. I wouldn't. Me, just show up. Yeah, show up with your camera and everything, and just be there. Squat the place. Get as soon as you got a few hundred, they can't just clear you out. They don't want to make a scene, basically.
And there isn't even any need for it, because, what Bilderberg, can you remember where there's been some sort of, organised
event
grouping. I mean, usually it is just basically people getting their feet on the
exactly.
streets, and then that's it. It seems almost redundant to have a show for it. It just makes sense to have decentralization in this sort of thing. It's not they're not going to welcome people in, and if they wanted transparency, if they wanted to have people from the alternative media and the mainstream media, they would invite them in. So it's obvious that it's not going to be something that having a large organized event is going to be beneficial, in my opinion, anyways.
Up until last year, there was very small gatherings at Bilderberg in terms of calling protesters, observers, photographers, journalists, whatever. But that gathering, that kind of anti-Bilderberg gathering, was very small. I mean, we're talking about hundreds at best. Until last year, and I believe last year it was at Chantilly, Virginia, that it kind of exploded a little bit, and then we saw on site sort of anywhere between sort of 500 and 1,000 people at any given time over the span of the event. Now that changed things a bit. The police brought in fencing and stuff like that to keep the people off the road. So that was a first. So to sort of push it from there to a kind of fringe festival or whatever, that's quite a big jump in terms of organization and so forth, and sort of pre-warning to the public and the authorities that we're going to be here. But I see it as I knew straight away especially when I heard Alex Jones is shouting on his radio show and website for weeks that he's going to be coming to England to make his presence known. And believe me, when Alex Jones shows up, his presence is known. He marched around Bilderberg last year it was kind of like the Pied Piper with just a stream of people following him behind him everywhere, filming everything he says. He's got his megaphone. He was shouting through it for about 48 hours, almost continuously. And my feeling on that is there's enough intelligent people out there who are familiar with Bilderberg, who know what they get up to within that meeting and behind closed doors, and enough journalists that might be interested in it. Now, they just for legitimate, coverage, to really dig in there and take this thing apart. And there's been no discussion about what the Bilderberg agenda might be this year, only about this Fringe Festival, which is really interesting. And I kind of made a big deal about it this past week because Mike Robinson and I more or less figured out quite just by looking at the morning papers on May 19th what the agenda was going to be, because Google had its conference at the Grove Hotel last week, and that's Google's pre-Bilderberg meeting, where Google's currently in a row with the British government and other governments over unpaid tax. They're calling Google a tax ghost. And so just amazingly, at the same time, there's from all these liberal economic corridors and major newspapers and planners we need a global tax structure in order to deal with the likes of Google and Amazon. Well, here's a perfect Trojan horse, because you cannot have a tax, you cannot levy a tax unless there's a government behind it. And so I agree with Mike that the embryonic government bodies are already in place, not least of all the G8, which is conveniently meeting a week after Bilderberg in Northern Ireland. So you have this is a major topic of discussion which is going to be on there. We know it's going to be a major topic because the major guests at the Google Big Tent event last week are all the same people, many of them who have attended Bilderberg in the past, some of them for 6 or 7 years straight. Okay, so we know that they're discussing it. George Osborne was there, Ed Miliband was there, Eric Schmidt was there. They're having a public row, and in private, they're VIP guests, and they're entertaining each other. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be at Bilderberg this year. So, and then G8's after that. So this agenda will be kind of ratified at Bilderberg and then rubber stamped at the G8. And then it's basically, anyone's guess when this can become policy. But it's a perfect Trojan horse because, they, like all of these Hegelian problems, reaction solutions, it becomes an issue with something recognizable, something big, like, for instance, Google. Well, Google's the biggest, most profitable company on the planet. It dwarfs all the auto manufacturers and everybody else. So it's a perfect Trojan horse to sort of, spark public outrage with Google's not paying their fair share. And here's the solution. We've got this one here. This is ready to go. This is a global tax regime. Mm-hmm. Now that's not going to be confined to Google. Google will always be able to, and they have done already. They've always been able to sort of use their financial clout and leverage in order to secure a series of intricate offshore tax havens and financial instruments to hide their profits. And the people that can't afford to do that are small to medium-sized businesses and individual traders. And that makes up the majority of the trade on the Internet. So voila, there you go. This is a new global tax regime, which is not really targeted at Google. No. Okay, they're going to end up paying maybe a bit more, but it's going to pale in comparison to the profits they're going to make next year. Their profits are growing not exponentially, but they're steadily rising.
And if you look at Bilderberg 5 years ago, global taxation was, of course, on the cards because that was when there was the heavy push towards a global carbon taxation system, which has fallen a little bit on the wayside, I guess. And so then it's going to be leveraging. Right, what can we get away with this global government, a way to tax the entire planet? And this does seem like we're moving in that direction, where it will be, maybe based on digital taxation. Everybody is on the internet in the West, so they're maybe moving away from solely having a global carbon tax and a basket of global taxes that we can be extorted for. But it definitely seems like Google is going to be a key player. As we spoke to Brian and Charlie earlier, they seem to have a lot more presence the last few years. Mark Zuckerberg, everybody.
Exactly. We saw a couple of months ago, RT let out a email and correspondence between Colin Powell and Tony Blair's office, and then they copied in a handwritten note from Tony Blair to Colin Powell. But the initial email read that Colin Powell felt that Tony Blair should completely clear his diary and always keep the Bilderberg weekend free. And Tony Blair's wrote back in a handwritten note to say he was unable to make last year but will be attending 2013's, and to contact his personal secretary Ellie. And at the time RT had left Ellie's personal number up. Right. So I managed to jump on the phone and found, obviously she didn't answer. I left loads of messages to say, would he be attending this year? No one got back to us. But it's interesting to see if he does turn out, and interesting what the protesters are going to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, more than the protesters, I think anybody who's in, if you're an activist and a concerned citizen, then yes, your focus might be more on the sort of gathering, the safety of the protests, and so forth. But for some of these big media personalities, trying to pick apart and project and learn and decide and debate about what is on the agenda should be first priority. Even for Alex Jones, who seems like most of his headlines about Bilderberg have the word Alex Jones in the headline. So I just question some parts of the alternative media is a lot of people are buying into this kind of little circus and taking their eye off the ball. And the ball, obviously is what exactly are they deciding? Are they ramming through? Because if we know a little bit in advance, then there's a better chance that we can preempt some policies, at least in the discussion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I do believe we are now simulcasting with the Pete Santilli show over in the USA. Pete, are you there?
We are. We're connecting right now. As a matter of fact, we are going to right now just say we're officially connected to the United Kingdom with Liberty Tactics. Hello. And we have Patrick Henningsen on the line as well, correct?
Patrick's with us, yeah. We're having a bit of a discussion about this year's Bilderberg.
It's like a crossover show that used to get in those old 70s and 80s sitcoms.
Yeah, I'll just tell our listeners, Pete, that we're going to be streaming our shows on the Guerrilla Media along with yourself. So we're really excited about that.
We're excited to have you aboard. I just told everybody that we were going to be connecting to you. Ladies and gentlemen, just a brief introduction here as we come back from the break. We are now connected into the UK with James and Lou, with Liberty Tactics, as well as Patrick Henningsen. Patrick actually connected us together. We hit it off right away. We are like-minded individuals who essentially we've added them to the Guerrilla Media lineup, and we're excited to have that coverage out of Bilderberg. So thanks a lot for having me and connecting us. What are you guys talking about?
Well, we're just going over Bilderberg at the moment.
We just had a mainstream journalist from The Guardian come on and talk about, what he's expecting from it. And we had Brian Gerrish, who Patrick and I work alongside with the UK column. He was quite challenging towards this mainstream media journalist, and it was great. Mm-hmm. And then we've had someone who's works for a paper called The Sovereign Independent, Neil Foster. He's been on because he's been liaising with the police over in Watford and organising our own little press tent where James and I are going to be reporting with you and with the MSI network directly as delegates are turning up, and we're going to be doing a live broadcast. David Icke has agreed to be interviewed with us live on the Friday, so we'll be broadcasting that with UP and as well as MSI. We haven't got a time yet with David and what time he's coming on, but it'll just be literally, we'll just be calling you as delegates turn up and sending photos off.
Keep an eye out on libertytactics.com because we'll be adding some information on how people can connect to live streams, use streams and all that sort of business in the coming week. It's going to be a busy week as we prepare for Bilderberg 2013.
Hey! So what
That's awesome.
Go on, Patrick.
I have a quick question for you, if you don't mind. David Icke put out a report this morning. I don't know if you folks saw it, but did you hear he was criticizing the fact that the application, I guess, that they had submitted for the Fringe Festival was declined, he said, because they had not submitted it 3 months in advance. And from what I understand, we only found out where the Bilderberg conference was going to be held, about 3 weeks in advance of the event, right?
Yeah. I sent the link to him last night about the application being rejected. I did ask the mainstream Charlie Skelton a little while ago, did he feel that maybe the Fringe should have organised got all the clearance for the venue before announcing all the big name speakers and announcing all of this, because there are going to be thousands turning up there by the looks of things, but they're now not going to have anywhere to go. But as we were just saying, I mean, proper protesters and people there will be wanting to turn up to the event anyway, and really focusing more on the event rather than going to a Fringe festival, we hope.
It seems to me a bit redundant, and quite frankly, this is a very powerful group that has gone out of their way to keep it as secret and hush as possible. The last thing you're going to have is, an area that they're going to go have the event in, giving permission for any sort of gathering that is going to interfere with it whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, Castlebury Park is quite away because I know it very well. It's where I grew up. So I do know the area in Castlebury Park is quite set away. There is some woodland right behind the Grove, but nobody, you won't be able to see anything because it is literally a very dark little wooded area. Mm-hmm. And as we said before, the back entrance and everything is all going to be sealed off. People aren't going to be allowed to go down there. So where it's situated is a very busy road, and it leads onto one of the major motorways.
Am I right? It's a 2 mile driveway to the actual Grove Hotel. 2 mile private driveway. 2 mile private driveway.
So we have Neil Foster from the Sovereign Independent has organised a press tent for Liberty Tactics, for the UK column, and Sovereign Independent, just by the main entrance, just behind this little fenced area. Right. I managed to walk into the Grove and wander around there the other day and got the staff members to take photos of me. And no one could quite believe it because everyone who's been walking up there just around.
You're obviously COINTEL.
Of course, yeah. So
to explain how you arrived with all those Secret Service guys.
Secret Service all around me. Joke. And so I had a wander around. I took some photos. Got the staff to. The staff wouldn't speak to me. They just said it'd be more than their job's worth. So that was interesting.
But we've seen previous Bilderbergs, massive amounts of private security as well as...
Oh, I think it's G4S, is it, Patrick? I'm sure it's G4S looking after it.
Do they want effective security? Because if it's G4S, then we should be able to get in all right.
The police bill is going to be estimated to be approximately £2 million, which is about $3.5 million for the security for the in and around Bilderberg. And those are figures from the Home Office, via the Telegraph newspaper just a few days ago. But this kind of raises the question, how big is the police presence going to be? You don't know. And are they going to be heavy-handed? Probably not. But if, there's a good chance that, because it's been so well publicized with this fringe thing, there might be more people showing up than what the normal sort of inquisitive Bilderberg crowd who normally shows up. There might be other people showing up. So it'll be a situation like the summer solstice at Stonehenge, where just about everybody's who's got even a tertiary interest to Bilderberg who's going to be showing up. And these aren't all people that you probably want to be hanging around with.
And as we saw last year in Virginia, you had more mainstream journalists there than you would have ever had previously at Bilderberg.
Yeah.
But it was still very much that same sort of kind. I think there was I remember watching an interview with somebody from Salon magazine, and he was just going around to everybody saying, well, they're just playing golf, man. These just a bunch of dudes playing golf.
There we have Henry Kissinger in Armani suits.
Yeah. So do you think there's going to be a much larger mainstream presence than usual? And how do you think it's going to be? Is that going to play out? I can't see it being
the mainstream press in Britain. Most of the time, they're there to basically be ready with a camera in case a fight breaks out, or in case some trouble breaks out. I saw that in Cyprus with all the major networks there when the banks were about to be open after being shut for 15 days. They were just on edge, waiting to see a scuffle break out or some sort of violence, because that to them is news. Very little inquiry into what's actually caused the banking crisis. Same thing will happen in Bilderberg. They'll send their people along. If you see cameras, it means that from mainstream and producers, it means that they're expecting some trouble. And in the case of, I'm going to say this because I know this from personal experience, with the student loan protests at Parliament, there was a guy who was sleeping on my friend's couch who came from out of town. I didn't get his name. And he was there. He said he was being paid by Sky News £200 to go there and maybe cause a little trouble in the crowd or something like that. Wow. Kind of boast about it. So that I can't prove that in terms of documentation, but a lot of people believe that the mainstream press, through their sort of network of lackeys, actually pay provocateurs to show up so they have something to report on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I was just going to say that because I'm sorry to interrupt. That's what we call it, the narrative that I'm hearing right now is the fringe fest. They want to take pictures of jugglers in tights that might be mingling with the provocateurs.
Mm. Yeah, exactly.
As we had with all of the G20s, there's always that.
There's always that, exactly.
I guess we've not seen it with Bilderberg prior because prior there was never enough press coverage in general. Exactly. And now that we are, that is something. Look out for people with army boots on. I usually wear army boots, so I'm going to have to wear some flip-flops or something just so people don't think I'm a cop.
Pete, just to break the Bilderberg stuff up at the moment, for the benefit of our listeners over here in the UK, can you just give us a little insight into guerrilla media and what inspired you to start your own radio show, and just a little bit more about yourself, really?
Yeah, I'd love to. And I just want to let everybody know that I am a person, just a brief history. I came from the United States military. I was a United States Marine. Then I went into corporate America. Was an executive for Coca-Cola as well as Bell South. I discovered through my interactions in corporate America, things aren't exactly what they seem. I actually became a whistleblower and sued Coca-Cola in a $200 million class action lawsuit because they were stealing wages from their employees internally, and they wouldn't fix the problem. So they threatened to give me hush money and make me go away. What ended up happening was I ended up suing them. Then I became a consumer advocate, had a small business. And the next thing you know, at around this December of 2011 it was, I said, I need to do something. I need to grab a microphone and start awakening as many people as I can in the shortest period of time possible. And here we are 400 and something episodes later. And by the way, if I could introduce Susanna Cole, she's my co-host on the show. And I think she's joining us. Has she been connected,
yeah,
Susanna?
She has.
I have been. Hi.
Hi, Susanna.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Susanna has literally helped me awaken to a lot of these issues that as a former, a neocon Fox News Republican, she's also been very awakened because she comes from a family that, for many, many years has known the history behind, I guess, the man behind the curtain, and they've taught her very, very well. So during these 400 and something episodes, I've actually awakened right in front of our listeners. And that also includes, believe it or not, the fact that, mainstream media is tainted. And we also discovered through this entire experience that a portion of even our alternative media has been compromised. Why? Because I think just for the sheer economics, I keep blaming it on that. There are, those people that they call, quote unquote, COINTELPRO. There's all those conspiracy theories. But I think that we even have an alternative media right now that cannot speak 100% of the truth because they're beholden to their corporate sponsors, and they think that, if they could just, receive more money to propel themselves, they can reach more people, when in fact all they're doing is propagating only 95% or 98% of the truth. What we really focus on, being the alternative to the alternative media and Guerrilla Media Network, we've been able to maintain our independence, and we are 1,000% beholden to our listenership. We've even decided, although we do have supporters, we do have sponsors, but none of them have ever picked up the phone, called us to tell us what to say or what to do. We have maintained our independence. We continue to do that every single day. We hope to do that in the future so that our obligation is met with our listenership. So Guerrilla Media Network is what we call the alternative to the alternative media. I won't call us fringe.
No.
I'll call us the breakaway individuals that I believe will, I think if we can convince our listenership that instead of them, watching television and seeing a corporate sponsor and then running down to their local retailer and spending money that way and pulling money out of their pocket, if they can realize that by contributing to shows like this, by pulling their money out of their pocket and helping us build our network, that we can be a people funded operation that is just, not just obligated, but dedicated to bringing the truth. People are so starved for the truth right now.
Agreed.
They know things are very, very wrong, and that's what's helped us build our show and our network. But they're so starved for information. That's exactly what.
We have got like an awakening. We've also got a chemical, food and media-induced deadening of people's brains, and I think the divide between those that are awake and those that are just sleepwalking through life is getting larger every day. But those people that are awake and aren't idiots, they have a lot more discernment now, and the media, the mainstream media, can't get away with anymore saying that these groups meet together to play golf and talk about Angry Bird scores, and they're far more discerning. They're looking for the real deal, and I think that's why us lot here that we're on Liberty Tactics, UK
Patrick,
Carl and Patrick, your show. It's just people talking very real of what they see, what's going on, and trying to uncover this, and people relate to that because they can tell when, be it alternative or mainstream, when they're being bullshitted. Yeah. So, right on.
So, Pete, what's the topic of your show tonight? You're on for another hour, 2 hours? Are you 3 hours?
Yeah, we actually have a 4-hour show, and Pacific time. We start off at 10 o'clock, and 10 o'clock Pacific time. We go 4 hours total. Now we've had to actually cram all of our information into 3 hours. We typically have a lot of guests on. Today we need to do some catch up with the news. There's a lot of news reports, one of which is Bilderberg, believe it or not. We have to talk a lot about what's going on at Bilderberg, who's going to be attending. We will continue that conversation, obviously, after we break up today. But there is a lot of stuff that's happening right now in the United States relative to the IRS, the Benghazi event. If people in the UK are following these stories as to how the president of the United States and Hillary Clinton and herself and all these scandals that are coming about could potentially topple the U.S. government that's in place right now. So we're going to be talking more about those issues. And today is catch up for a lot of our news because we've had power pack days every single day of the week, and we have to catch up with our news and catch up with our listenership and take calls.
What mainstream publication were you featured in? Was it the Mail? They were most upset about Hillary Clinton's vagina being attacked. Was that the Daily Mail?
I'm so glad you brought that up because I didn't want to.
Well, look, if we can discuss Hillary Clinton's vagina, I'm on it.
Well,
I'm on like a fat kid on the Smartie.
I'm going to tell you, just as long as just as long as they are okay with discussing vagina in the UK, I'm okay with discussing it here in the United States.
Well,
I'll tell you.
The comments were quite angry. You know, they were upset that her vagina had been attacked in such a way. I guess if we had used a drone to attack her vagina, it would be okay.
Right. You know, can I take a serious moment?
Please do, Pete.
Let your listeners know exactly what has happened here in the past week. I literally, let's say I have a 3-hour, at the time it was a 3-hour show. And I was just irate, just violently upset, screaming at the top of my lungs at the fact that the President of the United States and the then Secretary of State knew what was going on in Benghazi and actually committed treason against our country by their actions. This is not conspiracy theory. These are facts that are being relayed out there. And I said, why is she not being held accountable? She's committed treason against our nation. And here in the United States, the penalty for treason is death. So I said, listen, let's indict her. Let's bring her up for trial in front of Congress, right? Let's convict her in front of a jury or in a congressional panel. And then, you know what? Instead of death, how about if we, let her live? And I said, I'll even volunteer to assess the penalty. Let's just shoot her in the vagina.
Well,
Pete, one sec. Apparently, one of our listeners here in the UK is saying we're okay with discussing vaginas, just not Hillary Clinton
because she's a C word.
So crack on, Pete. Sorry.
See, you know what? That's what I should have said. I made the mistake by even inferring that she has a vagina to begin with.
Because vaginas are useful.
James.
Vaginas are useful.
James.
Hillary Clinton has not been useful.
So listen. She and she does have a well-used vagina. Yes, of course, but that's a separate matter to be discussed later. But here's what happened: the liberal media and an attack machine run by the Clintons took that excerpt and they basically, within a 24 to 48-hour period, converted that to me being a woman hater and a person that was calling for violence.
Oh, they did.
I am offended that people think that Hillary Clinton is a woman.
Yeah, I do take offence that she. I must say, I take offence that she is classed as a woman. Yeah, Susanna, how do you feel like? What do you feel, Susanna?
Well, I got to tell you, it was quite a roller coaster. I didn't know exactly what to think when it started hitting mainstream. It first went on a website called here in the U.S. called the Daily Poll. And it was just somebody making fun of it. It wasn't a huge thing, and it linked back to the episode. And then a couple of days later, I'm like, I get a Google alert for Pete because I keep Google alerts so I can keep up with the stuff that he's doing, right? And it was the Huffington Post, and then it was Raw Story, and then all of these liberal, very, very, very extreme liberal websites that prop up the Clintons and they prop up the socialist idea here in America. They prop that up. It was just running everywhere, and it just went viral overnight, and the phone started ringing off the hook, and the next thing you know, Pete's getting a visit from the Department of Homeland Security.
Wow.
So, I mean, it escalated that far. Threats, death threats. The death threats were the scariest thing.
I think their question, Susanna, is: can you attest to the fact that I love vagina? Do I love vagina?
He loves vagina.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with vagina.
Thanks for clearing that up, both.
Because I was quite threatened.
Susanna, do you think that Hillary Clinton has a vagina?
I think I agree with the panel here. I think she has a well-used vagina, and that it's time for it to retire.
Do you think it's a sovereign?
She just needs to let it go to sleep.
Do you think it's a sovereign state like Washington and Vatican City is?
No, actually, it's
more private army. And
you know what? I think it's more of fast food.
Right.
than a sovereign state itself.
Oh my God!
Savannah, I'm going to try and move this on a little bit.
Look, we got to lighten the mood because next weekend we're going to have the CIA down our backs, MI5. They're all they'll be digging into our past.
That's right.
And, you know,
let's get it out there now.
We need to give something for the Daily Mail to cut and edit so that they can upload. But Liberty Tactics and
alternative media are talking about.
I know exactly. I was thinking the same thing.
Maybe even Patrick can chime in on this. I have a question for all of you.
Go on.
What is up with I was kind of disappointed because I've read some stuff on the Daily Mail, but is the Daily Mail considered a left-leaning libtard rag? How come they failed to include any of the other information I brought up about Hillary Clinton committing crimes against humanity? I mean, why were they just so into calling me a misogynist? Are they a left-wing outlet?
Not particularly. The Daily Mail actually is quite anti-establishment on many fronts recently because they've seen a gap in the market, and they've done some really good stuff exposing Common Purpose recently, earlier in the year, and they have taken the side of the people on many issues. But unfortunately, the mainstream press would be more interested in digging into the past of someone like Pete Santilli rather than digging into the past of someone like Hillary Clinton when a decision like this is put forward. So,
and
I was really I was disappointed by that. I thought they would at least mention the fact that, I mean, even something that I discussed, 30 years Hillary Clinton's been actually covering up crimes against women that have been perpetrated by her husband. They wouldn't cover any of that. They wouldn't cover the treason. It was just kind of disappointing.
But you do get that a lot, and a lot of people shy away from the word treason. Brian brought it up to Charlie in the last hour, and Charlie was like, "Oh, I don't know if we want to use the word treason." Well, treason is treason, and basically, our politicians meeting in private and discussing policy with other nations is treason. Ted Heath signing us and committing sedition to get us into the EU in the 70s was treason. And the reason, I think, one of the reasons why they shy away from using it is because it's still one of the only laws in the country that you can get the death penalty for. And I think that they were actually actively trying to repeal the treason laws in the UK because they're all guilty of it.
Yeah.
But it does have a stiff penalty because it can destroy an entire nation. It can destroy millions of people's lives.
Yeah.
It isn't something that should be handled lightly, and it is something that's utmost seriousness. And of course, it's something that the police forces, the secret services, stay completely away from, and so does the media because they are all in bed, of course. But it doesn't stop that from being a reality. Just because they're all in bed together does not mean treason does not exist, and that is not serious. But it takes the fringe alternative radicals to even bring it up these days, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And you never know how the internet's going to go. And they really don't know. If something starts catching on and starts catching fire on the internet and people start equating Hillary Clinton's name with treason or John McCain's name with treason, it can go viral very, very quickly. And then that idea can get into the minds of the people. And they don't want that to happen. So I think a lot of times that's why they don't even go there, because they don't want that they don't want that uprising. They have this mindset, even in alternative media, about how, you have to be very politically correct and you have to be careful about what you say because you don't want to upset the people and you don't want to get people in trouble, needless trouble, So, they said there's not going to be a revolution. There's going to be a revolution of the mind, and people are going to rise above the warring and the fighting. And, I don't see that happening for a long, long time. And in the meanwhile, we all just keep losing our liberties, and they just keep committing treason again and again and again, and it gets worse and worse, and people die.
Yeah, totally agree with you.
We're running out of time on the show, so let's consolidate here. Back to Bilderberg. We've got 1 week it's going to be an intense week, and
we're going up on the Wednesday. We're going to get there. We're going to be there really early Thursday, waiting for the delegates to go in. We're going to hook up with Pete and Susanna the second the people start arriving. We're going to get photographs.
So what do we expect?
Yeah, what are we
will be the topic on the agenda at Bilderberg, because we've talked a lot about what's
Google,
what's happening. We've got Google has just had their big meeting. They're going to be there.
Yeah,
they're going to be there at Bilderberg. We touched upon the taxation, a global taxation system based around the internet and corporations not being able to get away with avoiding taxes, so without having some sort of global tax, which we know who that's going to affect, and it's not going to be Google.
So should we go to Pete first? Pete, what do you think is going to be the some of the topics?
Well, this is what I'm hoping. We already know that behind closed doors, these folks are meeting to commit nations to war, establish world government and currencies, and taxation without consent of our people. I want to hopefully remind everyone on the outside of those doors that they must protest and demand accountability for these people to be making decisions on our behalf. They need to know that the people will not consent to such a thing. They don't have the authority to do that. I didn't vote for those people passing through those gates. And please let Henry Kissinger know he should feel grateful that I'm not there screaming at him with a bullhorn.
Absolutely. Susanna, what do you think is going to be on the agenda discussions?
Well, I truly do believe that their agenda is escalating. I think the New World Order is going to be high on their discussion list, and that is, how it's coming along and what we can do to hasten it just a little bit. And because every year that they have this meeting, you will shortly see afterwards that that things start escalating on in the Middle East. I think there'll be a lot of discussion about that to close that once and for all.
Yeah, it seems that they need to get Syria out of the way as soon as possible.
That's right.
Yeah, to move on to Iran. Patrick, what about you? Your final thoughts?
Well, I think it's going to be very interesting if who's going to be attending. Now, you have to remember this year that Jim Tucker, who is a veteran investigative journalist for American Free Press, covered Bilderberg for the better part of 40 years. In fact, a lot of us wouldn't even be talking about it right now if it wasn't for the efforts of Jim Tucker, who sadly passed away on April 24th, I believe. Very sad. But Jim normally got the leak of the guest list. In other words, he had the full sort of rap sheet of who was attending and would leak that to the alternative press in advance of the meeting. And having Jim not there means that it's possible that we might not see the full guest list this year, which would be a shame. Because otherwise you've got blacked out Mercedes SUVs and limousines taking people in you won't know who's in. We will get a little bit of leaks from here and there as to who's there. Normally what happens is the U.S. leadership or whoever's tapped to be in the top leadership position will be there in advance. So 2016 U.S., if you have any up-and-coming U.S. people like, for instance, Marco Rubio or Rand Paul in attendance, it's a good possibility that they might be handpicked to sort of take over the reins in 2016. That has been the case many times in the past, not just for U.S. politics, but for British politics as well, with Tony Blair there in attendance. Basically, they bring in the new blood in there to sort of open doors and serve water, believe it or not. They sort of have to prostrate themselves to the sort of veteran Bilderbergers when they first arrive, their first year at Bilderberg. So will Rand Paul be pouring out sparkling and still water to people like Ken Clark and Henry Kissinger? That remains to be seen. But the big thing that we have at Bilderberg really is the discussions around a global taxation regime, a global currency, and implementing a global government. And all these sort of bodies are already in place, and they'll start to be given real jobs to do, real work to do. So we've just had the shells of the global government erected, but soon will be actual stuff for them to do. And it's undemocratic. It has nothing to do with voters in nationally sovereign countries. And that word treason, that's an important topic of discussion. We could do a whole show defining treason. And we're seeing that wholesale across the board right now, and groups like Bilderberg are the incubators for that sort of activities and behavior.
Brilliant. We're out of time, folks. Pete, Santilli, Susanna Cole, thank you so much for doing this simulcast with us. We'll be in touch early next week to finalise everything Bilderberg and when we're going to start streaming with you guys. And thanks for giving James and I a chance on with your network. And thanks to Patrick for putting us all together.
Thanks to MSI. Glad to see everybody back. And keep an eye on libertytactics.com over the coming week, because we're going to
updating it.
We're going to start getting some information on there so that everybody can get the live streams going and keep everything going. So
Pete
until
and
then,
Susanna, Patrick, thank you.
Stay on the line, guys. We'll have a chat with you when we play out the music. Liberty Tactics, stay frosty.